Good evening. My name is Brightops, and welcome back to Mordheim, City of the Damned. Starting off short and sweet today, we've got a new face to introduce. As you all likely will remember, we picked up a wolf priest of Ulrich last time, who has revealed that their name is Slythe 2107. I haven't been able to contact Slythe about what colors he wants to be just yet, so he will be customized a bit later on. We're also proud to announce that with this new episode that Captain Cyclone will be returning to his leadership role, whereas Captain Mr. Troves is currently undergoing some training into using heavy armor. Now I should probably explain how leveling up works a little bit in character, with the only character currently available who can. That's Miss Alana. When it comes to skills, as you level up, you earn unspent skill points, and you may use them in active or passive skills. The problem is that actually training a skill costs money. It not only costs money, but it also takes time to learn. So, for example, if I was to want to teach her how to sidestep, which would allow her to, when she takes a dodge stance, to dodge 2 different attacks instead of just 1, it would cost 270 gold, but it would also remove her from active service for... Let's see, what's the learning time would be 3 days. She would be out of commission for 3 days because she would be learning how to, be better at dodging attacks. So for the moment, we will be keeping her active. But anyway, with our introductions out of the way, let's see what the new day brings.
New hired swords are available.
Let's see. We've managed to recover. Gravest still retrieving his treatment. Mr. Troves is training. We've received our money from that shipment we sent, and we can hire people to work with, if we so choose to. However, we're good at the moment, just making sure everyone's on the up and up. Okay. I'm thinking that we might do our quest mission next time. Once we've given people one last chance to earn some level ups and establish themselves before we go into it. Since none of the non-quest missions are, well, forgiving, we're going to be sending some scouts out to use for a bit of money in order to unlock different missions. Let's see, we've got a hard. Onion. See where? Yes. Why not? It seems like we've got a warband exploring buildings and 1 in strike teams. It's currently hard, but the stone is average. It's a crush their will, but I guess it's now a chance to show this off. Launch and deploy.
Seemingly alone in the ruins, you take the opportunity to send your warriors to pillage the nearby buildings. As your warband disperses and begins to explore, however, an enemy warband arrives and deploys its own patrols in the area.
Right, very well. As you can read, the sub-objective here is to steal the idol from the enemy's cart, and then bring it back to your own. Removing an idol from an enemy cart causes them to lose morale. It's a pretty decent amount of morale. It's not necessarily a game ender, but it can be crippling. Let's see where we are here. Where is the enemy? Ah, here they are. And we are fighting another human mercenary warband. Death before dishonor. We will be sure to help them with both. Now, let's... Just trying to find a good place to actually position people. Yeah, this... yeah. There we go. We will be taking this opportunity to gather as much wordstone as possible, but our main objective here is, in this particular run, will be experience. We're going to be going for the enemy cart. Now, in mention of the previous poll that I had for topics to discuss, it turned into a draw between learning information about the elves and learning information about the dwarves. Which, truth be told, I'm more than happy to talk about. They've got a very long and rich history. I decided that the best way to start off would be discussing just how the dwarves and elves got into this current state of affairs they are, since anyone who's familiar with the Warhammer Fantasy world will know that they absolutely despise each other. And and that comes down to the War of the Beard, as the elves called it, or the War of Vengeance, as the dwarves. Now, about 6,000 years before the current time, the dwarves and elves were the major powers of the world. They were at the height of their prowess. They were trading with each other. They were having pretty good relations with each other, truth be told. Unfortunately, part of the problems came from the elves having a somewhat elitist view of themselves. They have a tendency to be somewhat arrogant. And especially, they mostly view the dwarves as a lesser race. Still, despite this, they got along reasonably well. At least until some elven exiles, known as the Dark Elves, who will get their own information a bit later on, decided to fuck with their high elven kin by disguising themselves as high elves and then going and raiding and doing horrific things to dwarven caravans. This accumulated in the assassination of a dwarven runesmith, which really pissed them off. The dwarven king of the time politely sent some diplomats to the elven kingdom to ask for recompense for this travesty. And despite the fact that the High Elves were able to find evidence of their darker kin's involvement in the affair, the lesser dwarven kings kind of viewed it as them just making excuses. When the elven king of the kind, Calidor II, was a pretty solid warrior, but he was something of a reckless man-child mentally. So when the dwarves sent their ambassadors, at first they just decided to ignore their concerns, but they also, when the dwarves the dwarf diplomats were sent back, and the king returned for demanding more for the insult of, being dismissed. The elves decided to, as an insult to them, to shave their beards and hair completely off. Dwarven culture, the beard is is a huge deal. And especially the beard, just even touching a beard or doing damage to someone's beard is a killing offense. For the elves to have shaved the diplomats' beards, it sent ripples through the dwarven community. The dwarven king made an oath, then after learning about the diplomats, to, as he put it, we will get the money we're owed, or the price in elf blood, or I will shave myself. And many dwarves followed suit, basically swore the same thing. And thus started the War of Vengeance. It is known as the bloodiest war in Warhammer history, which, when you consider the fact that it was just the elves and the dwarves fighting, and races such as the Skaven or Beastmen or the Forces of Chaos weren't involved, this is actually impressive. But this war lasted for years, and it was, as you can imagine, a rather brutal affair. There was no quarter was given. No quarter was given, and it lasted for centuries. Since both dwarves and elves can live for centuries, this lasted a fairly long time. This caused massive...
A new round has started.
There were heroes and massive casualties all around. But in the end, Keldor II ended up being slain by the dwarves in open combat, and they were forced to abandon their colonies on what is now considered the Old World, where humans would eventually settle and rise to provenance. The war would have major repercussions for years to come. Partly this was because of Dwarven society. Dwarven society is built on the idea of grudges, the Book of Grudges. If a slight is made against a dwarf, it is recorded, and until it is settled, in one manner or another, it will remain recorded, and they will try to address it in one way or another, usually with the spilling of blood. They can be very harsh when it comes to this. For an example of this would be a human noble once commissioned dwarves to build a fortress for them, and they did good work. However, the human noble in question failed to pay them via maybe like a penny or something. They basically they failed to pay him to some degree. No, it wasn't by much, but it was, to a human it would have been next to nothing. But for the dwarves, it was considered a grave insult, and they proceeded to go to war with them with this human noble for it. Every insult is recorded. Every death is recorded. So, to this day, the dwarves and elves still hate each other 6,000 years on. This is just the short term. This was just considered the long-term effects of their races, but the War of Vengeance pretty much left both of them in a very precarious state. It crippled them both militarily. In the case of the elves, it left them open to renewed civil war with the Dark Elves, who took which forced them to abandon the War of Vengeance, admits that the dwarves are the winners, and basically reorganize themselves to not be wiped out. Whereas the dwarves, around this time, a series of serious earthquakes more or less shattered their holds, which left them vulnerable to invasions from the Skaven and the Night Goblins, which is a species of orcish goblin that lives underground, away from where the orcs can't really get to them. And more or less since then, the various dwarven holds have been under siege ever since by Skaven and Greenskin kind. It is honestly been a rather brutal affair. And as I said, this was 6,000 years before the present day. The grudge still remains. They have the dwarves still have names in their Book of Grudges from the War of Vengeance itself, which includes, but are not limited to, mostly the elves themselves are, by and large, well, dead. Very few even though dwarves and elves live for centuries, very few of them can live for thousands of years. Well, unless you include some of the dark elves, such as Malakath, but they've basically survived via. They've extended their lives unnaturally to a ridiculous degree. But yeah, the dwarven and elven hatred still remains, though they've cooled it a bit. It is still seen as somewhat poor taste for a dwarf to trade with an elf. Unless, of course, they manage to get a ridiculously high price for it, in which case it's seen as a good thing. But it is considered a death sentence for a dwarf to trade dwarven alcohol to sell dwarven beer to an elf of some kind. Alcohol to a dwarf is considered nigh on sacred. However, there is a loophole. They will find a loophole that if they sell it to humans first, and the human sells it to an elf, that's fine. That's none of their business. They don't care. Let's see where. There's a bit more warp storm this way. Ah, here's one of the bastards. And our wolf priest has found their warlock. And is promptly wrecking his shit.
A new round has started.
Seven is down, but unfortunately there was not much that could be helped there. They ran right into their captain, and to be fair, did put up a fairly good fight. What the hell? Ah, yes, I believe we're seeing one of the heroes of... that the human mercenaries can get, the young blood. Though, truth be told, I'm not all that familiar with what the young blood can do. I've never actually really seen them in action before. Right, there's 2 pieces of wordstone over there, and we want to get them. We also want to kill that prick Jonah. Let's see, who did I pick up? Ah, yes, I picked it up with Sirius. Well, on the plus side, once we get Sirius to the cart, we will have achieved the second objective. So, massive XP for everyone all around. Yay.
Objective completed.
And we have managed to get some wordstone, though not much, I will admit. Oh, so there's where the last little group of them have gone.
A new round has started.
God damn it. That's annoying, but them's the breaks sometimes. We have just not had any real luck with ranged weapons today, have we? Well, let's see if we can at least kill this son of a bitch. And of course, avenge avenge Slife. Yeah. As much as I would like to grab that burnstone there, we should probably go and save Miss Lana a bit of time and trouble.
A new round has started.
I will admit this match has so far not been the best we've had, but hasn't gone the worst either. Which is kind of sad, honestly. What the heck is this guy doing? I'm pretty sure he just killed himself. He literally tried climbing up and down that thing so many times that he failed and landed poorly and died. The hell? I'll admit, I have seen the computer fail climbing and jumping checks, but that was the first. Hopefully, we will end this match before it gets. They managed to survive one. They managed to survive one proper morale check. Hopefully, we'll be able to. Hopefully, we'll be able to salvage it before they can recover another. Because the way morale checks work is, if you succeed a morale check, you don't have to do it again until you lose someone else. Which they have failed to do. Since we just killed their warlock, they're gonna have to do it again. And thankfully they failed this one before we lost anyone else. Whew. Now let us see what the damage is this time.
When the Baron hears how you decimated the enemy, he will be as pleased as a halfling in a pie shop. He may even send a bit of gold by way of gratitude.
Let's see. Well, on the plus side, at least we're going to get a fair bit of experience. But let's see what happens.
The gods are with you.
Cyclone has leveled up. Good. 1.
The gods are with you.
2 levels up. Nice.
Remarkable.
3 people have leveled up. Awesome.
Nice progress.
Number 4. Great. Let's see. A muck. Mental condition. Suffering violent mental derangement, the warrior will never again disengage or flee from an enemy. The warrior will always fight to the end. So, technically wise, that's not the best, but I'm not entirely sure, but I think this may mean you're also that Sinister 7 will be immune to all loan checks from here on out, since they'll no longer be capable of fleeing. So, all in all, not the worst one to get. Especially since Sinister 7 was a melee fighter to begin with. If they had been a ranged combatant, this might be more of a problem. Didn't quite get the level up, but still got a fair bit of experience nonetheless. Light wound, the warriors from flesh wounds, it will take a little time to recuperate from. So not a bad one, that's not a permanent thing. It just means it'll take a couple of days before they can fight again. Conrad can fight again.
Nice progress.
He's still leveled up, though. Megalomania. The warrior has developed a maniacal belief in its own might and power. From now on, it cannot use ranged weapons, and the cost of spells increases by 2 offensive points. So for a spellcaster, Scythe is... He can still cast spells, but it costs a lot to do it. This isn't the greatest. However, considering that the Warrior Priest of Ulrich are meant to be melee fighters with their spells being somewhat supportive of themselves and their teammates in the fight, this isn't the worst that could have happened. Okay, and while he did lose his axe, we did manage to reclaim it. So it's just a matter of re-equipping it. As for why the axe is important, the great Urukian axe it not only serves as a pretty solid melee attacker, but it also gives the priest a better chance of casting spells, or at least reduces the blowback from it. Well, that will be it for this time. A rather decent success, all things considered. But until next time, my name is Brightops, and I look forward to hearing from you.